please listen. Ladies and gentlemen, we are officially in comparative government, and I am starting comparative government. You will see the tone is different. The language, vernacular, all the things will be a little bit different. And the pacing is a little bit different. So the things that we are covering are no longer U.S.-centric. It is now about how the world sees things. And we will see that there is a definitive change. I'm also going to tell you that we are moving very quick. It's 12 weeks. What do you got, Riley?
Since we're learning about the world, we watch the World Cup tomorrow.
So that's the thing, Riley. So the game starts at 1. It'll still be going on to the second half. That's what I would like, because I legitimately care. I thought it started. The game starts at 1
It
tomorrow.
starts at 2, I thought.
Anyway, we'll figure it out. It's either, I think it's at 1 though. Maybe the coverage is at 1. I don't know. I would like to, because Iran is one of our 7 countries. So we could easily make an argument that this is comparative politics at the highest levels. Now keep in mind, by the way, Iran has officially petitioned FIFA to remove the United States from competition because we have been wearing armbands that have been showing Iran's flag changed.
Without the middle part, right?
Yeah, without the government kind of component and saying for all women, because in Iran they're having tons of protests right now. And who's leading the protests? The women are. They're burning the place down. So lots of problems for tomorrow's game. Maybe you saw over the break that Iran, when they did their national anthem, none of them said anything.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's because literally the country is in rebellion against their government. It's a huge deal. I understand you guys don't care about the World Cup probably. It's the largest sporting event in the world. Like, we think American football is like the greatest thing. No one gives a shit outside our borders. With that being said, it's like the Super Bowl, like huge. It's a huge deal. Unfortunately, our American boys haven't always been historically good, which is why we don't care. But tomorrow we're going to make it to the knockout round.
Yeah.
We're doing it. We're doing it. We haven't done it in a very long time, but we're going to do it. We're going to score a goal tomorrow. We're going to score a goal. We haven't scored one yet in the actual World Cup, but tomorrow we're doing it.
Didn't
Did we?
score one game
In the World Cup?
against Wales?
Side Wales 1-1.
Oh, you're right.
Also,
It was a penalty. It's a 2? Perfect. So, we'll see. Will depend how today goes, but I would like to. I would honestly like to be done with you and watch my World Cup because I actually genuinely care about soccer. So, with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, in your notebook, let's go. Write it nice and big, comparative government. Make sure it is a big transition, especially if you are using the same binder. Make sure it is a clear transition into AP comparative. We are done with AP Gov. The language and vernacular that we will be using is totally different. Like, for instance, actors is something we'll be saying a lot. Yeah, it's weird, but we're doing it. So, here we go. So, my goal is today that we get through what we need to. Tomorrow we watch the World Cup and you watch my lecture on your own. Sound good? Perfect. What do you think? Your test isn't still on Thursday? So, here we go. You do have a test on Thursday. Let me remind you. I will have no kindness for you mismanaging your time on your focus and on your vocab. It's going to take you longer to do. Would you agree? Yes. Okay? It is, because it's requiring you to actually think. Isn't that just the worst? So, with that being said, if you mismanage your time and you can hit the deadlines of turning in your assignments on time, there will be no sympathy. Is everyone clear? The deadlines are as they are. It's been the same assignments all the way through. The expectations have changed, of course. So that is due on Thursday. I will tell you, the wording of the test will be a little bit different because we are in a different AP exam. Is everyone clear? So the vibe of the test is a little bit different. You're still taking 25 questions on multiple choice. You have 4 options per thing. You have very few stimuluses. Most of them are application, but a lot of it is going to be comparison. Why does that make sense? Because we're in AP comparison. comparative. So they're going to give you a scenario, and you have to read to that scenario what country mirrors the opposite. And then you have to look at it and say, oh, it's not. Because you're comparing. So not only do you have to know things well enough in one country, you have to know well enough to compare directly to another country. Because we're in AP comparative. Now, if you're on your focus, you will notice all the charts have 7 countries, yes? Because, and we're doing columns, we're organizing information so we can make these direct comparisons. So it's not just blindly filling out these charts, it is actually trying to get you to start seeing the similarities and differences between the things, because that is the huge quintessential part. So I am going to tell you, the hardest test of AP Comparative will be this week. Because the wording is a little different from AP Golf. Because it is a different test. It's not like completely out of normal, but the wording will get you a little bit. Okay, and the stems of the questions are a little different because it's AP comparative, not AP government. Now, please listen to me. In AP comparative, there is no U.S. government. There is no U.S. government. However, I am going to use U.S. government as a frame of reference. So in U.S. we do this. In China they do this. In England they do this. In Iran they do that. I will be making those comparisons so you can kind of get pulled through, like, okay, it's like that, it's like that, it's like that. There is no U.S. in comparison, okay? But I will be talking about it. Now, I'm going to give you, of course, a PowerPoint, of course, where it have definitions. Write a quick definition. The definition isn't what you need to focus on. It is the examples that I'm giving you. Can we agree? So write a quick abbreviated definition, fine. It's the examples and the connections to other countries that is the most important thing. That is the kicker of AP Comparative. I'm telling you right now, it's harder, it's faster, and we are moving. And my expectations are higher. Yay! Welcome to Comparative. Oh wait, period. We're going to have so much fun. Here we go. So, political systems. Political systems are when laws and procedures create a structure. Okay? So, laws and procedures come together and create an authority. Here in the United States, what is our political system? We're a Republican democracy. We are a democratic republic. Yes? Hello? We are not a direct democracy, because in a direct democracy, everyone votes on every single thing. We vote for representatives. Those representatives vote for us. Okay? Those are political systems. Every country has similar to other countries, not all the same. Now, there are major terms that I'm teaching you today that will be used every day going forward. This week's content is the foundation for everything else going forward. So if we don't learn this content well the first time, it's going to hurt 4th, 5th, 6th time when you see it again. So the word state. A state is a country, write it down, a state is a country that controls a territory, government, and borders. Okay. You will not really hear us use the word country very often. Okay? You will not. We typically try to avoid it and use the word state. Now, all states, write this down, have to be a sovereign nation. Okay? Sovereignty is a huge component. Okay? Sovereignty is the ability to carry out actions or policies. So, the United States is a sovereign nation because we can implement something and do it. What is something the United States does that implements and then does? What is something we do? What do you got, Sydney? What is something the United States passes a law for and then does? Give me a example of anything. Think with me, Sydney. Come on now. What do we got? Desmond? Standardized scores? Schools? Guys, how about taxes? Hello? Think with me. Taxes. Taxes show that a country is sovereign. Why do taxes show a country is sovereign? Why, Alex?
Because they have control over the people.
No. Why does taxes show that a country has the ability to carry out actions and policies? Think about it. How do taxes actually get implemented? Grant. By a law. So a law has to get passed, and then what? Oh, okay. So Joe Biden says everyone owes him $20. You're going to jump up right now, open up your wallet, and hand Joe Biden $20? No, you are not. And I will tell you right now, most of the country is not going to do it. Okay? What do we do here in the United States? I've already recorded a video, and you have to earn tomorrow, because I can easily just do my own thing. So if you're just going to sit there and stare at me, I'm not carrying you like I did for APComp. Like, I refuse 8th period. Like, I cannot do it. I'm sick of it. What do you got?
We have like forced to pay people pay taxes.
Yeah, of course. Like, for instance, the stupid Keeping Up with the Chrisleys or some shit, whatever their name is, those people, Todd Chrisley or whatever, he's going to jail for 12 years because he refused to pay taxes. His wife is going away for 7 years because they did tax fraud. Okay? So, when we talk about a state, a government has to pass a law, they have to enforce it, they actually have to collect the money, they have to process it, and they have to make sure everyone pays. Is that an easy process or a hard process? It's a hard process. And keep in mind, you have to have people knowledgeable enough to fill the holes and fill the gaps and do all those kind of components. It's a lot. That's what makes a nation capable of doing it. Could you run your own tax law? Hell no. Okay? So, a sovereign nation. Historically, you need to know that sovereign nations are created in Westphalia, the Peace of Westphalia. Okay? The idea of state sovereignty is created under the Treaty of Westphalia or the Peace of Westphalia. Either or works. It is the treaty that ends the 30 Years' War. Now, the answer's already up there. What is the 30 Years' War about? Oh my God, Catholics versus Protestants. Yes. Okay, so how does the 30-Year War start? Caesar?
Martin Luther, protest against the Catholics?
It's not directly Martin Luther's, but obviously it's a thing. So England converts to Protestantism, yes? So what king can get married multiple times? Henry VIII. He wants a divorce. The Pope won't give it to him, so he becomes a Protestant, so he can divorce his second wife. I don't even remember. Anyway, so he wants to do that. So the whole country turns Protestant. Well, Spain, which is a devout Catholic nation, says, you can't do that. And England's like, watch us. And he's like, I'll make you. And then he invades England to turn them back to Catholics. Well, that's going to spawn the 30 Years' War, which is actually 36 Years' War. Other nations, Germany is going to invade France. France and Prussia are going to go to war for quite some time. It's chaos in Europe. The Treaty of Westphalia is going to end it. And it creates, put a star, state sovereignty. The belief that a state has control over all issues within its borders with no interference. It is the belief that a state has control over all things in its borders with no outside interference. Has this aged well? No, it hasn't aged well because we believe now in human rights and that is going to change this. But the foundations of state sovereignty are still there. That within a border, a country can do whatever they need to do in order to feed, protect, and provide for their people, as long as you are not infringing on their human rights. Like, you can't just go around killing people, because then the countries can invade. But this is the foundation of it. Okay? Now, to become a state, and you need to write characteristics of a state, you have to have 3 things. The first one is sovereignty. You have to be a sovereign nation. You have to be able to say, I'm going to collect $20 from every citizen, and you have to have the means to do it. You have to actually do it. If you're going to say you're going to do it, you have to be able to do it. That's state sovereignty. Okay? You have to be able to make laws, internal, external, and we'll talk about that. The second thing you need to have is highly institutionalized. Okay? Highly institutionalized means that there are institutions capable of doing the will of the government. So let's bring it back to the United States. What is an institution that we have here in the United States? It can be a part of the government, but it is specifically for one purpose that allows the government to function more effectively. Jimmy, what's one?
Congress.
So Congress technically is, because they're passing laws. Fine. But let's get a little bit more specific. What is something else the U.S. government has in power that's going? Nick? CIA, Central Intelligence Agency. Absolutely. They are trying to find the bad actors or actors who are against our country inside of our country. Absolutely. Get familiar and comfortable with the word actors. I'm trying it on today, and it's cringe. What do you got? FBI. IRS. What is the IRS responsible for? Tax collection. Remember, in order to be a sovereign nation, you have to be able to collect taxes. A highly institutionalized in our country is the IRS. Now, the IRS is 6 years behind on tracking tax information. So that's why there's usually a huge delay in when people actually get in trouble for breaking the law, because they're so far behind, because they're understaffed. But highly institutionalized means we have things capable of making sure the government functions properly. And then we have legitimacy. That is the third and probably one of the most important. Legitimacy is recognition by citizens of their leaders. Here in the United States, how do we do legitimacy? Elections. The idealized belief in a democracy is that we have free and clear elections that are not tampered with. Hopefully you feel that way, because we are in a democracy and that is always the gold standard. What is the other second most common way to have legitimacy? What is the second most common way, Emily? When you hear legitimacy, what are you typically referring to?
Well, voting is at the same.
Well, yeah, voting is elections. But what's another form? Because not every country votes. What's the legitimacy or the transition of power? Well, if you're not voting for them, how do they get there? Help her out. What do we got? Nick? Birthright. All right. Birthright is fine. Okay, birthright is fine. There was another term that I wanted, but I can't come up with it. So birthright is perfect. So legitimacy, what do you got? So religion is going to be like a predestined kind of thing for sure. Absolutely. So the two biggest ones are going to be elections or birthright. There's another term that I want, but I can't come up with it. Okay. Now, states, which we just talked about, you don't need to write this down because we've been talking about states, are countries that control and keep order within their borders. They use highly institutionalized government, they have state sovereignty, and they have highly legitimacy. Now, when we see these types of things, we have the workers of bureaucrats. You need to know that term. Write down bureaucrat. So inside states, we have a bureaucracy, which is filled up of bureaucrats. I am a bureaucrat. Why am I a bureaucrat? Why am I a bureaucrat, Emerson?
Because you're part of like an institution, like you're part of like, like
Sort of. What institution am I a part of?
education.
Okay, but I technically am a government employee, right? Yeah, I get a check every single month from every 2 weeks from the government. I get paid on Friday, thank God, because your girl's #poor from Cyber Monday. It's fine. It's fine. I'm fine. Okay, so with that being said, I am a government employee. I'm a bureaucrat because I am non-elected. Write that down. Bureaucrats are non-elected. So is Joe Biden a bureaucrat? No, he's a politician. Okay? Typically when you have elected officials, they're called politicians. Politicians can appoint people. And if you're an appointee of Joe Biden, you're technically a political appointment, a political position. Is everyone clear on that? I am a bureaucrat because I work for the government, but I am not elected. Okay? Are there lots of me or very few of me? Lots. Most governments are the highest employer of any country in the world. Okay? The U.S. government and all of its subsidiaries is the second largest employer here in the United States. Does anyone know number one? Riley. Walmart is number one. Yeah, they buy 150 people as of last year.
Wait,
Yeah.
a million? Or 1,000? Or just 150?
150. It's a very small margin.
Oh.
Yeah, they just got that title 2 years ago. It was a very small margin.
Why is Walmart so
Because they technically own people in other countries work for them. Yeah, so if you're in China, you technically are an employee of Walmart. So that's how they have so many people. Okay. Now, when we're dealing with state sovereignty, you need to know internal and external. These terms are going to keep coming up. Now, sovereignty is the word of the day. This is the biggest thing. If you don't know what state sovereignty is by the end of the day, you are in for a rough go because it's going to get harder from here. State sovereignty is a state's ability to control the things that are happening in its borders. State sovereignty internally is dealing with making decisions for their own citizens, collecting taxes, deciding to change laws. That is state sovereignty internally. Externally, it is making binding agreements or treaties with other countries. Now, here in the United States, our first treaty was what treaty? And if you're an A-push, you should absolutely know this. And if you've taken A-push, shame. What is the name of the treaty that ends the American Revolution? Treaty of Paris. The Treaty of Paris, which is signed in 1780, 6 officially, even though the war ends in 1783, is the end of the American Revolution. In that treaty, listen, I don't need you to write it down, but I want you to listen. In the Treaty of Paris, the United States, which is a new country at this point, signed a treaty with England saying that we will not go fishing off the coast of Newfoundland. We will not cut down trees in Maine, and we will pay them a huge amount of money. So naturally, what did we do? We naturally went fishing off the coast of Newfoundland. We naturally cut down most of the trees in Maine, and we never paid them a damn dime. So much so that what war is going to happen? Caesar. War of 1812. Keep in mind, this is after 1527, which is the Peace of Westphalia. So what is the justification for England's invasion in 1812? We didn't honor the Treaty of Paris at all. So what was their justification for invading the United States in 1812? We had no sovereignty. Why didn't we have any sovereignty, Jimmy?
Because we weren't our own state.
We aren't our own state because why? We didn't fulfill the treaty. That is the justification for war. We didn't fulfill the treaty, which allowed England to use as a justification for war. That is why the rest of the Europe did not interfere with England's invasion, because it was a justified war. We as Americans don't feel that way. Like, oh my God, how could you invade us and burn down D.C.? It's a justified war because we honor the treaty. If we didn't honor the treaty, we're not a sovereign nation. If we're not a sovereign nation, do we have borders? No. England invades us because of that. Who can tell me a non-sovereign nation today in 2022? Chad is a sovereign nation.
Washington?
Chad?
It was founded for like a week.
Okay, I can't deal. There's a country in Africa called Chad, so that's the one I'm referring to. You know. Okay, there is no non-sovereign nations. Because if you're a non-sovereign nation, what is everyone else going to do? Yeah, they're going to take you over, ladies and gentlemen. Okay? So, if you're not a sovereign nation, you're going to be invaded immediately. What is the justification Putin used to invade Ukraine? That Ukraine is a non-sovereign nation because the government had no control. Now, is that true? No, of course not. But the justification he used is that they couldn't maintain control within their country, and that's why Russia had to come and conquer. Which, did they? Hell no. With that being said, you need to know sovereign nations have internal and external responsibilities. If you can't do the internal, you're no longer a sovereign nation. If you can't do the external, you're no longer a sovereign nation. Both of these have to be equated in order to be seen as a sovereign nation, which gives you rights under the Treaty of Westphalia. Okay? If you have no sovereignty, if you're not a sovereign nation, you have no autonomy. Okay? No autonomy makes you a failed state. There are no failed states. There's failing states. Right now, Iran is one. Add China to the list this morning. Hot damn. China's in rebellion right now. China is rebelling. People are in the streets. They're protesting. The stock market in China has taken a massive hit today because of the protests for the first time. For the first time, openly, people in China are screaming in public, outside, that Xi Jinping should be removed from power. That is not said. That is not done in China. Huge things are happening in China. Now, is China a failed state? Absolutely not. However, this open rebellion is causing some problems. Okay. So, you should know what a state is. You should know what a sovereign state is. Now let's talk nation. Okay? A nation is a group of people. A group of people. Underline people. Who are bound by cultural or political ties. Okay. They're people. Okay? You're typically a nation state is how we typically describe a country, as a nation state, because there's a state, that's the government side, that's maintaining the sovereign part, and then we have nation, which is the cultural side. Now, please listen to this. Here in the United States, we do not have a big nation issue. We are considered a homogeneous nation-ish, pretty well for the size we are. The reason is our country was founded in 1776 with the Declaration of Independence. We went to war, and we defended our borders. We won the war. We kicked England out, and we started conquering territories westward. With this conquering of territories, we are undefeated in major conflicts. The War of 1812, we were invaded, but we ended up pushing the British back. Okay, World War I, we were never conquered. World War II, we were never conquered. We've lost wars, but we've never been conquered. So here in the United States, we have one political ideology of this belief in, one vote, one person, that America is the greatest country in the world. We're the white city on the hill. All of these things we all kind of believe in a big picture way. We are abnormal. There are some nations within us. Like, for instance, our Native American cultures are considered individual nations, like the Iroquois Nation. You should write that down. The Iroquois Nation see themselves as separate from the United States. However, they follow the laws of the United States. That is the difference between a nation and a state. A state is laws and framework and governmental procedures. A nation is a cultural or political identity. They are an Iroquois nation. There's 6 official nations we recognize here in the United States. Do they have large populations or small populations? Super small. Do they have big influence or very little influence? Very little influence. If they rebel, what do? We historically, yes. Yes, we do. Historically, today in 2022, I doubt we will, but here we are. Okay. With that being said, we're a unique nation. We're a unique nation because our history, A, is very small. Other places in the world have very complicated nation issues. For instance, if you're in a place that got conquered by colonizers, okay, so imperialism's happening, white people are coming in, carving up these territories, do you think they give a shit about the natives? And their relations, their political agreements, their cultural identities, their religions? No. They're coming in and drawing straight lines because it's easier for them to manage because it's a straight line. In Africa, there's 383 different unique cultures. There's only 43 countries in Africa. So are all those people represented in their own unique governments? No. So in South Africa, for instance, they have one state, the state of South Africa. They have 13 nations. The more nations you have, the more conflict you have. Can we agree? Okay, because all these people are identifying individually within their own kind of component, not as a cohesive thing. Now, America doesn't have that many nations. We only recognize 6. However, does that mean we are incredibly unified in our beliefs? No, of course not. But do we have less problems than other countries? Yes. Have you ever wondered why Iran, Iraq, Afghanistan have so many problems? It's because a bunch of white people came in, wanted the oil, drew straight lines because it made it easier for them, and they put groups and nations of people together that weren't supposed to be together. Fundamentally opposed, all within the same boundaries, and these nations are still going after each other and killing each other and literally doing all of these complicated things. So, in a country, you have a state, which is the government, and inside that state, you have nations. The ideal situation is to have a nation state where people are all working together and have similar political beliefs. What is the best example of a nation state? Nations and state all aligned. Japan is the best example. You should write that down. The people of Japan all have the same culture. Not exactly the same, but very homogeneous. They all have similar beliefs, they have similar cultures, they have similar customs, which makes it easier for them to agree. Here in the United States, we're coming from all different backgrounds. We're more homogeneous than a lot of other places, but we are not 100%. Regime is your next major term that you need to know. Okay, here in the United States, do we have a positive connotation or a negative connotation? Negative. When we talk about regime change, we really refer to that in Iraq. When we overthrew Iraq, we talked about how it's a massive regime change. A regime is a fundamental rules and norms of politics is when you have a consistency. Typically, when we say a regime, it's when one belief system kind of continues. So in England, we just had a regime change. Who can explain to me what was the regime change in England, Brooklyn? Queen died and then is replaced by? Wow, you've really, really paid attention to those news clips here. Yes, Queen Elizabeth II died and is replaced by her son Charles. Charles is now in his kingship. There is a fundamental difference. The Queen cared about specific things. Charles has already said he doesn't care about some of those things. He cares more about the environment. He cares more about cutting taxes, and he wants to do more state-sponsored things, while the Queen kind of hesitated away from it. It's a regime change. We don't typically say this in the United States, but we do have regime changes. When was the last time we went from one political ideology to a different one? Sophia? Yeah, when Biden. We went from Donald Trump, who was a Republican and those types of beliefs and the way he was spending money, and then we transitioned to Joe Biden, who is spending money in a different way. We don't use this term in the United States, but we do use it in other countries. Okay. And then you have government. Government is another term that you need to be familiar with. It is when the leadership is entrusted with running the state. The government is people. 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 You need to know that nation and government refer to people. When we talk about laws, we refer to what term? Not government, because government's people. We use what term now? No. State. When we talk about laws and ways we get there and all of the procedures of a government, it's referred to as the state. When we're talking about the people and how things run, that's the government. Okay? When we're referring to people, it's government. When we're returning to laws, it's the state. This is the vernacular you have to get comfortable with. Can you imagine your essays? By the way, did you notice I did not say countries? That is not a term we use in AP comparative. See, I got to work on myself. I also use the word countries. I am trying to eradicate that from my vocabulary. We don't use the word countries, because countries, we talk about sovereign nations. We don't use the word countries. We say sovereign nation. We no longer say countries. Okay. Perfect. Okay. That is where I left off on me. We can do that. Isn't this more exciting? I think it's interesting. I've learned a lot.